Hello and welcome back to 10 at 10. My name is Michael Ramage. I am the director of the Cyber Education Research Center here at Murray State University, and welcome back to 10 at 10. 10 at 10 is brought to you through a partnership between Murray State University, Sprocket, West Kentucky, and KY Innovation. Today is episode 242, even number episode. So we're going to talk about some of the news of the last few days and what we can learn and take away from it. And today is, I'm in one way, I'm all across the board, but it also kind of shows where the trends are for different sectors. So let me just get into it. Let me pull the screen up. First story. This came out 2 days ago. 49% of companies only 49% of companies to increase cyber budget after a breach. So, what that you can dig into it and you can take a look at it, and look at what it means. A couple of years ago, when you looked at that number, it was 63% of companies after a data breach plan to increase their budget. Now it's 49%. It's getting lower. I would argue that it's getting lower because we're investing more in security already. I have said this several times. You've probably heard me say it on 10 at 10. Every person and organization in the world is hackable. We are all hackable. The goal is that it costs you more in time, money, and energy to hack my organization than the value that you're going to get out of it. That's kind of that cost benefit analysis that you really want to do in cybersecurity. You want to weigh those risks and kind of look at that. But the reality is everybody's going to be hackable. Here's the catch. I always talk about stopping the little things. Well, the little things are our people. The little things is somebody clicking on a link to an email. It is somebody having a poor email password. Those little things, you can invest a ton of money and it's not necessarily going to make a difference. Now, user awareness training absolutely would help those things I'm just talking about. Password, two-factor authentication would absolutely impact those things I'm talking about. But the reality is a lot of organizations already have those things in place. So there's not the investment into that. On the flip side, I have shared examples with you before of specific organizations that have chosen not to update, not even though they know there's a risk, chose not to do something until they had a data breach. And then all of a sudden they want to invest, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars into upgrading their systems because they had an issue. If we do that ahead of time, we'll be better off. So, first of all, that one I think is very interesting. It's not necessarily that surprising to me, but that number is decreasing. But it's still ridiculous that half of companies will increase their cyber budget after a breach, where many of those won't do that ahead of time. Our second article comes from HelpNet Security. They always have some interesting things, and this one I think is interesting. In a recent HIMSS, I forget exactly HIMSS, but it's the Health Information Management Secure System Security Organization. It's kind of the health IT cybersecurity group. They did a survey, reveals that 74% of those respondents experienced at least one significant cyber incident over the last year. So that means 3/4 of healthcare organizations that responded to this HIMSS survey experienced a significant cyber incident over the last year. That's a bunch. Of those, only half of respondents expect to grow their IT budgets in 2025. So that kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. 55% of of those of health systems plan to invest specifically in cybersecurity, strengthening tools, updating policies, and expanding IT teams. And this is, I think, what's interesting when talking about their what happened. Why was there an incident? The root causes are mostly the same: poor security practices, reused passwords, outdated tool, insufficient staff training, and employee fatigue. Those are all real issues. The stronger our passwords are, the more frustrated our employees get. The the harder it is to remember, or the more steps or whatever that might be, the more frustrated our people are going to be. So there's always going to be a balance of how much security do we do, and how much do we um, relax the rules for usability's sake. Every organization is going to have to pick that. Every organization is going to have a unique situation on why the answer is what it is, but that's going to be a challenge. Meanwhile, we're getting hammered with cybersecurity attacks, and our staff, our IT staff, especially our security staff, they're getting tired. We need more people, but security is not seen as a profit center. It's just costing us money. So why would we do that? So that's a challenge. All right, let's go from healthcare to financial. New research shows institutions in the financial sector experience up to 300 times more cyber attacks than other sectors, with large banks reporting 45% of their employees are susceptible to phishing attacks. Actually, this second paragraph to me is the most, uh, maybe the scariest thing on here. A study from KnowBe4, who does phishing emails and user awareness training, says 97%, so almost all of major U.S. banks experienced a third-party breach in 2024, while targeted intrusions against financial institutions increased by 109% year on year. 45% of employees, according to the survey, are likely to click on a link, a malicious link, download an infected file. 45% are likely to fall for a phishing campaign. Now, in my experience, that number's a little bit lower than that. A little bit doesn't cut it. Is it 45%? Is it 25%? It's still too many. We can invest all the money in the world in our cyber security defense, but if our employees are going to click a link, it's like opening the back door and letting the bad guys in. It's like forget all this stuff out there. Here's the side entrance. Just come on in here. That's a problem. So anyway, so we've talked about healthcare. Now we're talking about financial. So let's go to another sector. How about that? Let's go to education. Hacktivism is a growing threat to higher education. Now, let me connect all three of these sectors together. Every sector is going to have a threat of hacktivism. Every sector is going to have a threat of users clicking on a link. Every sector is going to have password challenges. All of these things are across the board. And in education, this comes from Campus Technology, which is an education type of publication. In this situation, there is perceived racism or DEI efforts that in particular the administration has called out. And this example that you see on the screen is that Columbia University was targeted in a cyber attack that stole millions of admission records and the hacktivist that did it pointed to what was perceived as race-based admission standards um, after a Supreme Court decision that was in 2023. Forget what your opinion is of any of it. Because when you're a cybersecurity professional, you're looking at risk, not at political perspective. And the risk is if there is visibility into something, then there's a chance that bad guys use that as a reason to attack your organization. So if you're in a position where things are increasing in visibility, then you need to make sure that you're protecting yourself for those situations. All right. I can go into a lot more detail about hacktivist, and maybe I will in a future episode. But for now, just know there's a lot of threats out there, and you need to make sure that you're protecting your organization from these growing threats. All right. I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next week back here on 10 at 10. Thank you. Bye.